Hey guys, thought I'd give you a what you might find on Marketplace. Clean 96 Formula Z 583. It's got the old Rotax rotary valve, super reliable. Obviously, this has had a new suspension put on here. It's not the old C7, it's a SC10, so that's a plus right there. Sat for probably almost 10 years. You know, its last trail permit was in 16. Um, Whole fuel system was it was a mess. So you've got to pull the seat, you've got to pull this tank shroud, and if you got to pull the shroud, then there's going to be some rivets. There's one down here, two up here, and then the same on the other side. So you have to pull that out. Um, you're gonna break the seat bolts for sure. So I mean, these are the seat bolts. What you can do is get carriage bolts and just grind. That's carriage bolt head. So just grind that flat, and then you have to pull. Oh, that goes in about right here. So you have to pull staples back on both sides. You have to pull the staples. Then you can yank the seat. Then you have to get this tank cover off, pull that. I had to swish the tank out. Then the pickup was laying inside of the tank. Obviously, the grommets are going to be junk. So if we can get in here, move cable aside. And what you're going to have is there's your tank grommet. So you put a new tank grommet on, run a couple inches of line to get it around that radiator hose, and then put a hard elbow in there. Because they curved that hose around just one piece. And excuse my hand, it's way too close to that caliper if it gets hot. So there's a better shot. So there's your new grommet, 2 inches of line, nice elbow. That goes out to the petcock that's on the running board, and then that comes back out. Now here's the T. And that T, if you think you can go buy it on eBay with a primer kit, because maybe you need a new primer, but that won't fit because this is 3/8 and this is 1/8. So you won't find that. And then this kicks down to the fuel pump. So what we had on this sled was it was just drinking injection oil. And we all know what that is, you know. And the antifreeze was down too. So your injection oil's down, your antifreeze is down. Where's it coming from? Well, it's coming from the water pump seals in the front. And there's 100,000 videos online of how to do that, how to change it in the sled, out of the sled, whatever you want to do. So first thing we do is we mark it. I just took masking tape. We marked the level. Obviously, we're out of antifreeze, and the reason we're out of antifreeze is because there's no engine. There's no engine in this sled. So if we spin around here, here's the engine. Normally, pardon me, normally you're going to pull the water pump. There's one seal right here, and there's another seal on the back side, and there's a gap in between. Now the gap lets it weep. That's your weep hole. It's in between the two cases. You can't really see it, but you're going to get some spooge coming out. Now, mind you, this motor is upside down. So you're going to get oil or antifreeze, or they're going to mix in the tank back on the sled. That was not the case on this sled. If we come over here and look, we've got the whole rotary shaft pulled apart. And what we found is, here's your seal that goes right up there. So there's your carb for your mag, there's your carb for your PTO, here's your seal. And then everything in between these two seals is in an oil bath. So let's look at this seal. Okay, fine. Let's look at the outer lip. There is one tiny part left on this. And this motor was hydrolocking with oil. The oil was sitting in here in the bottom end. Like I said, remember, this is upside down. But this oil was filling, and coming out this seal, going right in each cylinder, and just absolutely hydrolocking that engine. So once you get all this pulled apart, the last thing that goes on is this seal. The shaft goes in, and then there's a snap ring. So what I found was I could take this seal and spin it with the screwdriver. And I said, oh man, we're in trouble. Consequently, the whole motor had to come out, because if that seal marinates in injection oil its whole life, and that's junk, what do you think the crank seals look like on this side and this side? They're junk. So if we go over here, this is the mag side seal. Pick the ring off. Now what I saw after I pulled the magneto was, let me find it. See how it's chewed up? I said, oh, that doesn't look good. So once I got the motor apart, I took the spring seal off. The second I bent the seal, I mean the second I bent the seal, let's watch this, there's your inner lip. Let's watch. Oh, gone. That's, nope. Engine meltdown waiting to happen. Now let's go in the box of old parts. Here's the PTO seal. You can see where I wiped it off on the top, but look at all the belt gunk and crap around there. That was leaking too. So, I guess if you have to do one, you have to do them all. Because that's just not going to work. You're going to, like I said, this was hydrolocked. So, thank goodness I didn't catch it at the right time, where it had enough oil. It might have bent a rod, or done something nasty. So we're going to replace seals on both ends. We're going to replace that rotary valve seal, and then there's two more seals. There's one forward and one backward for the water pump. And we're going to get this is your shaft, and these are all the build-up parts on that. And this is probably the worst one, is you have to pull this stupid washer, and it's always seized up. Look at the backside of that. Just nasty. So you drill a hole. You got to slide hammer it out of there. It's going to be a hot mess. Get that out. Let's put that back where it goes. And then you see some guys are like, well, there's grease in between. Well, if you look on the diagram, yeah, there is grease between here and this seal. Look at, what do I got a pile of? That's old lithium grease. You don't have to pay $1 million, but it needs the grease in between both these. Because, let's take this and this and go over on the other side of the motor. Well, and this washer too. Because let's watch. Okay. The seals are still in this motor. So, you're going to put the washer up on there. Now your rubber seal. There. And see, now that's flush. That just built that out to flush. Now you have to take a big socket or something and knock that in. And you have to have that grease in between there. So there's 100 videos of that online, but 'twas not the problem. Oops, I dropped that. But that was not the problem. So let's set this back out in order. You're going to have that, and that. Keep it in order. So when you get your new parts, you can take your shaft and then look at this. What direction does my seal go? Drop on. What direction does my bearing go? Look, plastic cage, non-caged. Just drop it right back on. You flip all this when you take it apart so you know what direction it goes. Look, here's spacer. Does it go this way or this way? Take it apart the way you took it off. That's how you get it all put back together. Inspect this rotary valve gear. See, now that's marked. Water pump, CWP. Right here on this side, I don't know if you can see it, but it says RV. So you got water pump side, rotary valve side, and then this gear can go, you can slip it right down on this shaft, but you can be 4 degrees out either way. And then your rotary valve will actually make up for that. That'll get you in the general direction, but if you build it right, you can get it just spot on. No problemo. You don't have to worry. You know your timing's on. That sled should fire instantly. That's done. So, it's what happens when sleds sit so long. They just sit so long, that seal dries up, your crank seals dry up. These ones in the middle are a pain in the butt too. They have always been a pain. What happens is, let me go around. They will leak in the case on the outers. right here and here. But now you got the inner. There's your inner with your spring seal. There's your other inner with the spring seal. Usually the outers are tight, and I like to just baste them with a little bit of gasket shellac, something. Gasket cinch, the Permatex it's the same stuff. You just and don't use the dabber that's in here. Take a Q-tip, pull some stuff off a Q-tip. Just put a little tiny bit right here on that raised ridge. And look at these too. You can't, if you got a little chunk missing out of there, all this oil that's right here is going to kick out. And you're going to wash this cylinder, wash that cylinder. Hey, but at least it's not going to be from lack of oil. So the other problem you're going to have, like I said, is these inners. So what do you do about that? You know what you have to do about that. This crank gets pulled, it has to get split apart, and you're $600-800 into the sled. Easy. Minus gaskets and whatever else you have to do. So what you can do is pop those seals, and let me go see if I can find one real quick. There, I got one. So here's a seal. That's your spring seal. That's right there. Now, if you can see, right in the middle. See right there? Come on, phone. There you go. There's a gap. So if you can unscrew that and snip an eighth off the female end, and it tightens it up, and then you can put that back on. I've got to set my phone down for a second, but I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So bear with me. I'll unscrew this in just a snap and show you. Bam, I'm done. I'm back. So let me get around here. There is your male end. I know you can't really, stinking phone won't focus, but there's your male end. There's your female end. So you cut, there it focused. So cut just a smidge off on the female end. Keep your male end, and then you can take these and screw them back together. And I always like to start them back. Start it back where it's springing the wrong way. That way, when you get it screwed together, the whole spring seal lays flat. Because if you just screw it together the way it sits, it's going to be, concave, smiley face, frowny face. This won't sit flat. So what I do is spin it backwards. So let me try to show you. Here you go. So I'm going to roll counterclockwise, and then I'm going to hold this. So I'm going to roll counterclockwise, and then I'm going to put the two ends together, and then spin till it's tight. When it's tight, you can feel when it's tight, and then you can pull it. That's not going anywhere. And look, that's flat. That's flat. It's not curved up anywhere around, but that's what you want to do on the crankshaft. Sorry, I dropped you guys. But that's what you want to do on these seals. And you don't necessarily have to do it on them, but when you pick the crankshaft up, you can spin these, this guy and this guy, and feel if they're tight down here. If they're not tight, do just what I said and tighten those up. And then, like I said, also take your gasket sealer, take a Q-tip, smear a smidge on both of these seals, reseat the whole thing. You want to do gasket seal on all these O-rings, 1, 2, 3 on the PTO, 1, 2 here in the center, and then you got 1, 2 on the mag. So seal all that up, get this clean, same thing. Seal it all up, new seal on both ends. I mean, you're out time. You're not out money. It's a lot of time. Do that right, and you're going to be a lot better off. It's not always these water pump seals like everybody tells you. I hope that helps somebody out, and we should get the sled going here in a couple days. You know, inspect your crankcases. You're always going to have, these little dirty marks, but I mean, you really can't feel them with your fingers. On the 670s, the crank rings are going to be pinned. Like up here, these rings, the bearings even, they're going to have pins sticking out of them, and you have to make sure that the pins stick into the grooves on the case. So that's a little bit quirky between the 670s and the 583s. Well, as far as pulling the magneto, all you need is a steering wheel puller. You can set this up on here, bang this home, and you're good. Clutch puller, I am so tired of guys saying that you can do the water trick on a 583. You cannot do a water trick on a 583 because if we come over to clutch, pull this out, it's a straight bolt. And most are, but when you get like halfway out, it'll grab another set of threads. If it grabs another set of threads, you can do the water trick, but you can't on this. You can clearly see that these are coarse threads. And then when we come over to the puller, these are fine threads. Okay? So these aren't going to grab to the very end of that puller. You cannot do the water trick on a 583. Does not happen. I guess if you could find a 16 millimeter by 1.0 thread, you could, I guess you could fill this whole space with water or grease and just put a bolt in and kick it. But for $20, you might as well get the puller. And you have to watch the parts online because there's a lot of them that show you that 16 mil by 1.5 is the correct puller. It's not. It's not. And if you're in doubt, get a thread pitch gauge. Go ahead and get your bolt out. At least you can get your bolt out. But then you're going to check right in there. See? There's threads in there. Go ahead and stick your thread pitch gauge in there and see what they are. Because they made a couple few changes. Nothing crazy, but seeing that goes right through. I'm not screwing that at all. So get you the right puller, and I like to just screw it on tight. Same with the flywheel puller. Screw it down tight. Give it a couple hits with the impact, gentle. Same with this. Screw it down tight. Give it a couple hits, gentle, and then you can just give a gentle tap on the end of both of them. Let it sit. Hey, if it's getting late, let it sit. Don't worry about it. And if it still doesn't come, back it off like a quarter of an inch and then just ram it home with the impact. I mean, that's sometimes what you got to do. But the reason you don't want to do that is because these bearings, especially the PTO, are plastic caged. So what happens when you hit on the end of this with your clutch puller? You know, your clutch puller is going to go right in here like that. And you're banging on that. You don't want to take the chance of fracturing this plastic, because now you have to take this off, find the bearing. That's going to be like a $60 bearing. I mean, it's what you want to do. You might as well just take your time. Now, the mag side on a 583 doesn't have that. What they have is that sits there, and then it gets the seal, and then you have this nice cover that goes over it. So just be careful. Go slow. Like I said, sometimes you got to back those pullers out just that far and just smoke it. And it'll pop. It will make all kinds of noise. Get that all apart. Then you can just take off all the 10 bajillion bolts that hold the bottom end on. Yank that, and it helps if you lift up. Then you can slide the rotary valve shaft out. You can hit the end of this, and you got to spin it as it comes out. But that's so hard. It's so hard because you have this big shaft, and then at the end, you're down to this. And you can't hurt any of these surfaces. You can't mess up any of the threads. You're better off, because I'm telling you, if that seal is bad, these crank seals are going to be bad also. So you might as well just take the whole thing apart and be done with it. Take it apart, put it back together. It's not super hard. And, you can pressure test it when you're done. You have to block off your cars, block off your exhaust, pump like 5 pounds of air into it, spray it with soapy water, see if it holds. But you're going to be great. I mean, at least you're better off than how you were. And it won't be hydrolocking with oil. You won't be losing antifreeze on the other end. You can come back here. Always mark your oil level. Mark your antifreeze level. You have to burp it when it warms up. Check your hoses, on your rotary valve. These are weeping a little bit. See, they have check valves. This is a check valve. On the back side, that's one cylinder. There's cylinder number 2. There's check valve for that. Those check valves stick. I mean, that's not the end of the world. It's not dumping oil. So get this all cleaned up. Take a look at it. These lines have to be crisscrossed, because the pumping action, they'll sit there and pulse and flex the line, and they'll wear out. So if you look in the manual, it shows them to be crisscrossed, just like I have them. And I like to, it's nice when the Otika rings work. We still got Otika rings on the bottom. We got zip ties on the top. But spin them, check them, make sure your lines are pliable. I mean, these are super pliable. They're fine. Prime your pump. You can take the pump off. There's a bolt. There's another one on the other side. You can take the pump off and prime it. But on the back, here's the crappy plastic gear. And then, spin it. You can hold that pump wide open and spin it, and it'll bleed. Or you can take it off and spin it by a drill. Has to go counterclockwise though. So make sure you're not looking at the backside and spinning it the wrong way, because you're going to be like, "Oh, it doesn't work." Well, there's my problem. Well, no, you're not spinning it the right way. So spin the whole gizmo the right way. Inspect your teeth, look at it, check your pump valves. There's oil injection. There's oil injection. You see I got some oil. I mean, yeah, she's dripping a little. So those check valves are a little sticky, and I already had these out and sprayed them. Blew air back, forward, whatever. They'll come around. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. And I'd rather have the motor have a little bit of oil when it starts up anyway. So do that. I guess the other thing I could say too is obviously clean up your stator. Clean all the, see, you got some rust on there. Clean that up. Tap all your bolt holes. If you're sitting here waiting on parts, tap your holes, clean all the gunk off of there, get everything tapped out, ready to go. Just watch what you're doing with this, because if you take this off, you can't pull it out. You have to physically take the plugs apart or cut them off to get this stator slipped back through. So you can always leave this here, but you can't be flipping the motor back and forth. And then always index mark it. I mean, you can see right there, I've got a mark on that. Same on the flywheel. You've got this big balancer. That's got the big paint mark on it. That wasn't for me, but I just know where that should go. You're going to have marks on your clutch, big honking arrow. Look at that. You got a knot. See that little notch right there? That's that. And then I have the outside marked on that. And I just marked that for my top dead center on the mag side, because that's what you time the rotary valve off. So if you come over here to the rotary valve, you can't go, see there's the mark on the case, you cannot go off of that. That's for Sea-Doo or something. But if you actually measure your rotary valve, it's back. Remember, this motor's upside down, so I'm back. I'm counterclockwise. If this is the top of the motor, that's the bottom of the motor. I'm back. This is towards 11 o'clock. There's mark number 1, and then you can't see mark number 2. It's on my other case. Where's my other case? Let me set this on here for a sec. Okay, sorry. There's mark number 1. There's mark number 2. Now, if you got a stock rotary valve, you've got Carbon Tech, you've got, valve, I don't know. I got valves. What way does it go? You can take a piece of cardboard, cardstock. It doesn't matter what it is, but get your measurements offline. So your total's 159 degrees, 147 before top dead center, 65 after top dead center. All you're going to do is take this and line it up. I know it's upside down, but you're going to scribe a mark. You're going to check it at the top right here. And then go down 65 degrees. Keep it right here. measure down 65. Right? There you go, 65. That's your mark. Mark it. So, go the other way. Go to the bottom, and then come back around the other way. That should be 147. So your distance in between Mark A and Mark B, if you want to, play around, that should be 159. And then when you set that rotary valve on there, it should be dead nuts. So let's grab. I know this is the rotary valve. So here's our valve. Now we're going to set that on there. Watch. See that mark? See our mark down here? Let's put it with that. Put it with that. Look. There's my mark. There's my mark. You're right there. You know that is 100% dead on. That's dead on. That's how you want it. The motors run 4 degrees back, 4 degrees forward. This gear slips on the shaft, and it can be back or forward also. But then your rotary valve compensates a little bit. So it might be only, I don't know, totally, you might be 2 degrees off unless you totally botch something. But doing it with that method, with actually measuring it, actually measure it. That gets you, that's dead on, dead on. And then if you put a carbon fiber in, if you take one of these old rusty ones, clean it up, you grind some off both sides to give it a better opening. If you want more top end, all you're doing is splitting the difference between the two then. You're not going one way or the other. All you're doing is putting it back in the same spot and splitting the difference. I hope that helps somebody out. These are super, super reliable motors. I mean, you got cast iron bore, full cooling on the head. You're not dealing with individual heads, small ports that can clog up. The cooling comes down into the cases a little bit. They're rock solid. So get all that ironed out. Don't knock the motor because it sat for 10 years. Don't knock the sled because it sat 10 years. Get it all figured out. We'll get it back in here. You do have to bleed everything out. Like I said, you have to bleed the oil injection. You have to bleed the coolant. Hopefully you'll have a good running motor in the end.